I never thought moving day would end my marriage. But here I am, staring at divorce papers while my 7-year-old daughter asks why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. It all started 3 months ago when Simon needed help moving his couch. Simon Lott, my ex-boyfriend from college. We'd stayed friends over the years. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nate, my husband, had always been a little jealous, but I figured that was his problem to deal with. "Ridey, you sure you want to help him move?" Nate asked that Saturday morning, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. "I mean, we've got Mira's soccer game later." "It's just a couch, Nate. Simon's been really stressed about his new apartment, and he doesn't have anyone else to help." I grabbed my keys from the counter, avoiding his eyes. "Besides, you can handle one soccer game without me." Nate's jaw tightened. "That's not the point, and you know it." "Oh, here we go again with the jealousy thing." I rolled my eyes dramatically. "Simon and I broke up 15 years ago. We're just friends now. Get over it." The drive to Simon's apartment took 20 minutes, and I spent most of it texting my mum. She always understood my perspective. "Mom, men are just naturally insecure, honey. Don't let Nate's paranoia control your friendships." Me. "Exactly. It's so exhausting having to justify every little thing." Simon's apartment complex was nice. Nicer than our suburban house, actually. He'd done well for himself in marketing. When I knocked on his door, he answered wearing a tight grey t-shirt that showed off the gym results he'd been posting on social media. "Ridey, you're a lifesaver." He pulled me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. I was dreading trying to move this thing by myself. "That's what friends are for," I said, stepping into his apartment. The place smelled like expensive cologne and fresh paint. "Where's this couch that's causing all the drama?" He laughed, that same charming laugh that had attracted me in college. "Drama? Is Nate giving you grief about helping me? You know how he is. Thinks every guy is trying to steal his wife." I followed Simon to the living room where a massive sectional sofa dominated the space. "Can't blame him for being protective of something so valuable," Simon said with a grin that made my cheeks warm. We spent the next hour maneuvering the couch sections toward the door. Simon kept making jokes about our college days, reminding me of parties and late-night study sessions. The conversation felt easy and flirtatious in a way that my marriage hadn't felt in years. "Remember when we had to move your dorm room furniture?" Simon asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You were so bossy, telling me exactly how to angle everything." "I was not bossy, I was efficient." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "There's a difference." "Sure there is." He moved closer, ostensibly to grab the other end of the couch cushion. "You always were good at getting what you wanted." The compliment sent a little thrill through me. When was the last time Nate had said something like that? We were struggling with the main section when Simon suggested we try a different angle. "Here, if you sit on this end while I pivot it, we might be able to clear the door frame." Without thinking much about it, I perched on the arm of the couch, but the angle was awkward, and I slipped sideways, landing right on Simon's lap as he sat on the opposite end. "Whoops," I giggled, not immediately moving. Simon's hand steadied me at the waist, and for just a moment, we looked at each other, the way we used to in college. "Just like old times," he murmured, his voice lower than before. That's when I heard the key in the lock. "Ridey, I brought some moving straps from—" Nate's voice died as he stepped into the living room and saw me sitting on Simon's lap, Simon's hands on my waist, both of us frozen like guilty teenagers. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could see Nate's face cycling through confusion, realization, and something that looked like devastation. "Nate!" I jumped up quickly, smoothing down my shirt. "You didn't need to come. We're almost done here." "I can see that." His voice was flat, emotionless. He set the moving straps down by the door without taking his eyes off me. Simon cleared his throat awkwardly. "Hey, Nate. Thanks for bringing those. We were just trying to figure out the best angle for the couch." "Looked like you had it figured out," Nate said quietly. "It's not what it looked like," I said quickly, hating how defensive I sounded. "I just slipped when we were trying to move it. Simon was helping me not fall off." Nate nodded slowly, but his eyes had gone cold. "Right. Well, I'll leave you to it then. Mira's game starts in an hour if you're still planning to come." The way he said it made it clear he didn't expect me to show up. "Of course I'm coming. We'll be done here in 10 minutes. But Nate was already walking toward the door. "Sure you will." After he left, the atmosphere in the apartment felt charged and uncomfortable. Simon tried to make light of it, but I could see he was enjoying the drama more than he should have been. "Your husband doesn't trust you much, does he?" Simon asked as we finished moving the couch. "He's just insecure," I said, repeating my mother's words. "He always has been." But even as I said it, I felt a nagging worry in my stomach. The look on Nate's face wasn't just jealousy, it was disappointment. And something told me this wasn't going to blow over as easily as I hoped. By the time I got home from Simon's apartment, Nate and Mira were already gone to the soccer game. I'd taken longer than expected because Simon had insisted on buying me lunch as a thank you. We'd sat in a little cafe near his place, talking and laughing like old times. It felt good to be appreciated. I spent the afternoon cleaning the house and trying to figure out how to explain things to Nate. Not that there was anything to explain, really. I'd helped an old friend move furniture, so what if I'd ended up on his lap for 2 seconds? It was completely innocent. When Nate and Mira came home around 5, the tension was immediate. Mira ran to me with her usual enthusiasm, chattering about her game and the goals she'd almost scored. But Nate barely looked at me as he set down her soccer bag. "How was the game?" I asked, trying to sound normal. "Good. Mira scored twice." His responses were clipped, professional. "That's wonderful, sweetie." I hugged our daughter, but I could feel Nate watching us with an expression I couldn't read. After Mira went upstairs to shower, Nate and I were alone in the kitchen. I decided to address the elephant in the room head-on. "Look, about earlier at Simon's." "I don't want to hear it, Ridey." Nate opened the refrigerator and stared into it without taking anything out. "But you're clearly upset about something that was completely innocent." He closed the fridge and turned to face me. "Innocent." "Right. It was. I slipped and fell onto the couch. Simon was just making sure I didn't fall off. You're making this into something it wasn't." Nate leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "How long have you been talking to Simon?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, how long have you two been in contact? Because this moving thing seemed pretty last minute, but you dropped everything to help him." I felt my defenses rising. "We've stayed in touch over the years. As friends. There's nothing wrong with maintaining friendships, Nate." "How often do you talk to him?" "I don't know. Sometimes. When something comes up." I was getting annoyed with the interrogation. "Why does it matter?" "It matters because my wife spent the afternoon sitting on her ex-boyfriend's lap, and now she's acting like I'm crazy for having a problem with it." "I wasn't sitting on his lap. I fell backwards for like 2 seconds. My voice was getting louder, and I forced myself to calm down. "You're being paranoid, and it's not attractive." Something flickered across Nate's face at that comment, but he just nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am being paranoid." His sudden agreement should have made me feel better, but instead it made me more nervous. This wasn't like Nate. He usually wanted to talk things through until we reached some kind of resolution. "Good. I'm glad you can see that." I moved closer to him, putting my hand on his arm. "Simon is just a friend. You have nothing to worry about." "Mm-hmm." Nate looked down at my hand on his arm. "Did you have lunch with him?" My stomach dropped. "How did you—" "I mean, yes. He bought me lunch to say thank you for helping. It was just a quick sandwich." "Where?" "Some cafe near his place." Nate, why are you asking me all these questions? You're acting like I committed a crime. Just curious about how you spent your day. He gently moved his arm away from my touch. I'm going to go check on Mira. That night, Nate was quiet during dinner. Mira filled the silence with stories about school and her friends, but I could feel the tension radiating from my husband. After we put Mira to bed, I tried to initiate a conversation, but Nate said he was tired and went to bed early. I stayed up, texting with my friend Ellen about the situation. Nate is being so weird about me helping Simon move today. He walked in right when I accidentally fell onto the couch, and now he thinks something inappropriate happened. Ellen, yikes. What exactly did he see? Nothing. I slipped and ended up sitting on Simon for like 2 seconds. Completely innocent. But now Nate is giving me the silent treatment like I cheated or something. Ellen, men can be so dramatic. I'm sure he'll get over it. I hope so. It's exhausting having to justify every friendship I have. The next morning, Nate was up early, making coffee and reading something on his phone. When I came downstairs, he looked up briefly. Morning, he said neutrally. Morning, you're up early. Couldn't sleep. He went back to his phone. I poured myself coffee and sat across from him at the kitchen table. Nate, I really think we should talk about yesterday. What about it? About why you're so upset. I need you to understand that nothing inappropriate happened. Nate set down his phone and looked at me directly for the first time since yesterday. Ridey, how would you feel if you walked into a room and saw me sitting on my ex-girlfriend's lap? That's different. How is it different? Because it just is. It was an accident, and Simon and I have been broken up for 15 years. We're completely platonic now. Platonic? Nate repeated the word like he was testing how it sounded. Is that why you never mentioned that you were in regular contact with him? I don't tell you about every person I text or call. Do you tell me every time you talk to someone from work? Simon isn't someone from work. He's your ex-boyfriend. I was getting frustrated with his inability to see reason. Fine. From now on, I'll give you a full report of every conversation I have with every person I've ever dated. Will that make you happy? Nate stared at me for a long moment. That's not what I'm asking for. Then what are you asking for? I'm asking for my wife to understand why seeing her on another man's lap might be upsetting to her husband. And I'm telling you it was an accident. God, Nate, sometimes I feel like you don't trust me at all. Maybe I don't. The words hung in the air between us. I felt like he'd slapped me. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe I should have been paying closer attention to things. Before I could ask what he meant by that, Mira came bouncing down the stairs, ready for school. The conversation was over, but the damage felt permanent. That day at work, I found myself thinking about Simon more than I should have. He'd texted me that morning to thank me again for helping, and we'd exchanged a few messages about how much better his new place looked. It was nice to talk to someone who appreciated me. When I got home that evening, Nate was in his office with the door closed. I could hear him on the phone, but his voice was too low to make out the words. When he emerged for dinner, he seemed distracted. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just work stuff. But something in his tone told me it wasn't work stuff at all. The next few days passed in uncomfortable silence. Nate went to work, came home, helped with Mira's homework and went to bed early. He was polite but distant, like I was a roommate he barely knew. By Thursday, I was desperate to talk to someone who would understand my perspective. I met Ellen for lunch at Café Luna, our usual spot downtown. He's still giving you the cold shoulder? Ellen asked, as we settled into our regular booth by the window. It's ridiculous, I said, stabbing my salad more aggressively than necessary. He's acting like I had an affair or something, all because I helped an old friend move furniture. What exactly did he see again? I sighed. I was trying to help Simon angle this couch through his doorway. I sat on one end to weigh it down, but I slipped and ended up on Simon's lap for maybe 5 seconds. Simon steadied me so I wouldn't fall, and that's exactly when Nate walked in. Ellen winced. Okay, I can see how that might look bad. But it wasn't bad. It was completely innocent. And the way Nate is treating me now, you'd think I was making out with the guy. Have you tried explaining it to him again? I've tried everything. He just keeps asking weird questions about how long Simon and I have been in touch, how often we talk, where we went for lunch. It's like he's building some kind of case against me. Ellen looked uncomfortable. Ridey, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you have feelings for Simon? I almost choked on my iced tea. What? No. Ellen, he's my ex-boyfriend from college. We're friends now. That's it. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, maybe Nate is picking up on something you're not aware of. There's nothing to pick up on. I felt defensive and annoyed that even Ellen was taking Nate's side. Simon is attractive and successful, and yes, it's nice to have male attention that isn't followed by suspicion and interrogation, but that doesn't mean I want to sleep with him. Ellen nodded, but she didn't look entirely convinced. The worst part, I continued, is that Nate is making me feel guilty for having a friend. Like, I'm supposed to cut off contact with every man I've ever dated just because my husband is insecure. Maybe you could just limit contact with Simon for a while, until things calm down. Why should I have to limit anything? I'm not doing anything wrong. Ellen stirred her soup thoughtfully. Sometimes in marriage, it's not about being right. It's about making your partner feel secure. So, I'm supposed to cater to Nate's paranoia. That's not fair, Ellen. I'm just saying, pick your battles. Is staying friends with Simon worth damaging your marriage? I stared at her. I can't believe you're taking his side too. I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to help you see this from Nate's perspective. Nate's perspective is wrong. He's being controlling and jealous, and everyone is acting like that's okay because he's the man. Ellen looked like she wanted to say something else, but she just nodded and changed the subject to her own relationship drama. That evening, I was still fuming about Ellen's lack of support. When Nate came home from work, I decided to address the situation with some humor. Maybe if I could get him to laugh about it, we could move past this ridiculous standoff. Hey, honey, I said as he hung up his jacket. I helped 3 different men today at work. Should I prepare for another interrogation? Nate looked at me blankly. What? I'm joking. You know, about your paranoia regarding my interactions with the male species. Oh, right. He didn't smile. During dinner, I tried again. Mira, did you know your father thinks Mommy can't be friends with any boys? Mira looked confused. Why not? That's a good question, sweetie. Why don't you ask Daddy? Nate's jaw tightened. Mira, eat your vegetables. But Daddy, why can't Mommy have boyfriends? She can have friends, Nate said quietly. The issue is more complicated than that. No, it's not complicated at all, I said brightly. Daddy thinks that if Mommy talks to any man she used to date, even 15 years ago, it means she doesn't love Daddy anymore. Nate set down his fork. Ridey. What? I'm just explaining the situation to our daughter. She should understand why there's been so much tension in the house lately. Can we not do this at dinner? Do what? Have an honest conversation about your irrational jealousy. Mira was looking back and forth between us, her eyes wide. Are you guys fighting? No, sweetie, I said, reaching over to pat her hand. Daddy is just having some big feelings about Mommy's friendships, but it's nothing for you to worry about. Nate stood up abruptly. I'm going for a walk. Don't you want to finish dinner? I called after him, but he was already grabbing his jacket. After he left, Mira asked, Is Daddy mad at you, Mommy? Daddy is being silly, I told her. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements about silly things. But even as I said it, I felt a pang of guilt about involving Mira in our conflict. Maybe that had been too far. Nate didn't come back until after Mira was in bed. When he did, he went straight to his office and closed the door. I could hear him talking on the phone again, his voice low and serious. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Simon. Simon. Hope you're not getting too much grief about helping me move. Some husbands are just naturally territorial. Me. Tell me about it. Nate is still barely speaking to me. Simon. That's rough. You deserve better than the silent treatment. Me. Thank you. Finally, someone who gets it. Simon. If you ever need to vent to someone who appreciates you, you know where to find me. The message made me smile for the first time in days. It was nice to know that someone valued my friendship enough to check on me. I was about to respond when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I quickly closed the text conversation and pretended to be reading emails as Nate came into the bedroom. Who are you texting? He asked. Just work stuff, I said automatically. Nate nodded, but I caught him looking at my phone with an expression I couldn't quite read. As he got ready for bed, I felt a strange mix of guilt and defiance. I hadn't done anything wrong by texting Simon back, but something about Nate's watchful silence made me feel like I was already being judged. That night, we lay in bed with our backs to each other, the distance between us feeling like an ocean. The following weekend was Mira's 7th birthday party. We'd planned it weeks ago, a small gathering in our backyard with a few of her school friends and our families. I'd been looking forward to it, but now the thought of pretending everything was fine in front of everyone felt exhausting. Nate's mother Janice arrived early to help set up decorations. She was always polite to me, but I could sense her protective instincts when it came to her son. Today, she seemed especially watchful. How are things going, Ridey? She asked as we hung streamers from the patio umbrella. Oh, you know, busy with work and keeping up with Mira's schedule. I tried to sound cheerful and normal. And how's Nate? He seemed a little stressed when I talked to him earlier this week. I felt a flash of irritation. Of course, Nate had been talking to his mother about our problems. He's fine, just work stuff, I think. Janice nodded, but her expression suggested she knew there was more to the story. My mother, Marjorie, arrived shortly after, bringing an elaborate princess cake that Mira had requested. She immediately sensed the tension between Nate and me. What's wrong with your husband? She whispered to me as we arranged party favors on the table. He barely said hello to me. He's being ridiculous about something completely innocent, I said quietly. I helped an old friend move some furniture, and now Nate thinks I'm having an affair. My mother's eyes widened. An affair? Over helping someone move? I know, right? Men can be so insecure. Well, don't let him make you feel guilty for having friends. You're entitled to a life outside this marriage. Her support felt validating after Ellen's lukewarm response earlier in the week. As the party guests began arriving, I threw myself into hostess mode. I greeted the other parents warmly, made sure the kids had everything they needed, and took dozens of photos of Mira with her friends. But I was acutely aware of Nate's distant behavior throughout the afternoon. He was polite but cold, responding to questions with minimal answers and avoiding eye contact with me. Several people seemed to notice the tension between us. Everything okay with you two? Asked Sarah, one of the other soccer moms. You seem a little off today. We're fine, I said with a bright smile. Just tired from all the party planning. But I was getting more and more frustrated with Nate's passive-aggressive behavior. He was making me look bad in front of our friends and family by being so obviously withdrawn. When it came time for the birthday toast, I decided I'd had enough of his silent treatment. I raised my glass of wine and smiled at the gathered crowd. I just want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our beautiful daughter, I began. Mira, you're growing up to be such a smart, independent little girl. I hope you always remember that you can trust your own judgment and not let other people's insecurities hold you back. I looked directly at Nate as I said the last part. His face went pale. And to my wonderful husband, I continued, my voice taking on a slightly sharper edge, who always keeps a close eye on everything I do. Here's to trust and communication in marriage. A few people laughed uncomfortably. I could see Janice and Nate's brother Peter exchanging worried glances. Nate didn't raise his glass. He just stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. a mixture of hurt and something that looked like resolve. After the toast, the party continued, but the atmosphere felt strained. I noticed Janice pull Nate aside for a quiet conversation by the garden shed. Peter joined them, and all three of them kept glancing in my direction. My mother came over to me as I was cleaning up empty plates. "Good for you for standing up to him," she said approvingly. "Don't let him intimidate you with his moods." "I'm just tired of walking on eggshells," I said. "If he wants to act like a child, fine. But I'm not going to pretend everything is okay when he's being unreasonable." "That's my girl. You've always been strong and independent. Don't let marriage change that." As the party wound down and guests began leaving, I noticed Nate helping Mira pack up her presents in unusual silence. Usually he'd be chatting with her about which gifts were her favorites, but today he seemed distracted. "Daddy, are you sad?" Mira asked him as they carried a box of toys inside. "No, sweetheart. Daddy's just thinking about some grown-up stuff." "Are you thinking about Mommy?" Nate paused in the doorway, holding the box. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you and Mommy don't talk to each other anymore. And you didn't laugh when Mommy made her funny speech." "It wasn't really a funny speech, Mira. But Mommy was smiling when she said it." Nate looked across the yard at me, and for a moment our eyes met. The sadness in his expression caught me off guard. "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements," he told Mira gently. "It doesn't mean we don't love you." After everyone left and Mira was in bed, the house felt eerily quiet. I was loading the dishwasher when Nate came into the kitchen. "We need to talk," he said, finally. "I was wondering when you'd be ready to have a rational conversation about this." "That toast tonight was inappropriate." I turned to face him, surprised by his directness. "I was just trying to lighten the mood. You've been sulking for a week." "I haven't been sulking. I've been thinking." "About what?" "About us. About what I saw at Simon's apartment. About the way you've been talking to me since then." "The way I've been talking to you?" "Nate, you've barely said 10 words to me all week. Because every time I try to express my feelings about what happened, you dismiss them. You make jokes. You act like I'm crazy for being upset. Because you are being crazy. I helped a friend move furniture. That's it. That's literally all that happened." Nate studied my face for a long moment. "Is it?" "Yes." "Then why do I feel like my wife doesn't respect me anymore?" The question caught me off guard. "What are you talking about?" "Tonight, in front of our friends and family, you made jokes at my expense. You implied that I'm controlling and paranoid. How do you think that made me feel?" "I was just trying to—" "You were trying to humiliate me because I had the audacity to be hurt by seeing you on another man's lap." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Ridey? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife cares more about defending her relationship with her ex-boyfriend than she does about her marriage." I stared at him, feeling a mix of anger and something that might have been guilt. "That's not true, isn't it?" Before I could answer, Nate's phone buzzed with an email notification. He glanced at it, and his expression grew even more serious. "I'm going to stay at my mother's tonight," he said quietly. "What?" "Why?" "Because I need some space to think, and because I don't want Mira to see us like this." "Nate, you're being dramatic. We can work this out." "Can we?" He looked at me with those sad eyes again. "Because I'm not sure you even want to." He went upstairs to pack a bag, and I stood in the kitchen feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. This was supposed to be about his overreaction to an innocent situation. How had it turned into him questioning our entire marriage? 20 minutes later, he came back downstairs with an overnight bag and kissed a sleeping Mira goodbye. "I'll pick her up for school tomorrow," he said to me. "We can talk more after I've had some time to think." After he left, I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of Mira's birthday party. I felt angry and confused and, for the first time, a little scared. I picked up my phone and texted Simon. Me. "Rough night. Nate is being even more unreasonable than I thought." Simon. "Sorry to hear that. You deserve better." Me. Sometimes I wonder if I made a mistake getting married so young. Simon, it's never too late to reconsider your options. The message sent a thrill through me that I immediately felt guilty about. But as I sat alone in my empty house, I couldn't help but think that at least someone appreciated me. Nate didn't come home the next day, or the day after that. He picked up Mira for school each morning and brought her home each evening, but he barely spoke to me beyond logistics about our daughter's schedule. By Wednesday, I was getting worried. This silent treatment was lasting longer than any of our previous fights. I tried calling him, but he only answered when it was about Mira. "Nate, this is ridiculous. You can't just move out because we had one disagreement." "It's not one disagreement, Reedy. It's a pattern." "What pattern?" "I'll talk to you when I'm ready." The conversation ended there, leaving me frustrated and confused. Ellen had been distant since our lunch conversation, so I found myself texting with Simon more frequently. He was sympathetic and understanding in a way that felt like a lifeline. "Simon, how are you holding up?" "Me. Not great. Nate is still at his mother's. I feel like I'm being punished for something I didn't do." "Simon, his loss. You're an amazing woman who deserves to be treated better." "Me. Thank you for saying that. I really needed to hear it today." "Simon, anytime, I mean that." On Thursday evening, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Morell, this is David Green from Green and Finch Law Office. Your husband has asked me to schedule a meeting with you for tomorrow afternoon at 2:00. My blood went cold. "A meeting? What kind of meeting?" "I think it would be best if we discussed that in person. Can you make it tomorrow at 2? Yes, I'll be there." I spent the entire night awake, my mind racing with possibilities. Surely Nate wasn't serious about divorce. This had to be some kind of scare tactic to get me to apologize. The law office was in a sleek downtown building that intimidated me the moment I walked in. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where Nate was already sitting with a man in an expensive suit. "Reedy, thank you for coming," the lawyer said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm David Green. Please have a seat." Nate looked different, more serious than I'd ever seen him. He was wearing his best suit and had a manila folder in front of him that he kept his hands on like he was protecting it. "What's this about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your husband has asked me to present some information to you," Mr. Green said. "Information that has come to light regarding your relationship with Simon Lott." My heart started pounding. "My relationship with Simon? We're friends. I've told Nate that 100 times. Mrs. Morell, I'm going to show you some documents, and I'd like you to take a look at them." The lawyer opened his own folder and slid a stack of papers across the table to me. The first page was a printout of text messages. My text messages with Simon, going back 3 months. "Simon, miss talking to you. Coffee sometime?" Me. "I'd love that. Nate's been so distant lately." Simon. "His loss. You deserve someone who appreciates you." Me. "You always knew how to make me feel special." I felt sick reading my own words. They looked so much worse on paper than they had felt when I was typing them. "Where did you get these?" I whispered. "Phone records are part of our family plan," Nate said quietly. "I have access to them." Mr. Green turned to the next page. "These are your location services from your phone, Mrs. Morell. They show that you've been to Mr. Lott's apartment building 6 times in the past 2 months. 6 times? I stared at the timestamps. That can't be right. "It is right," Nate said, "including the day you said you were working late and the day you said you were shopping with Ellen." My mouth went dry. I had forgotten about those other visits to Simon's place. They had seemed so innocent at the time, just stopping by to chat or helping him pick out furniture for his new apartment. "This doesn't prove anything inappropriate," I said desperately. "We're friends. Friends visit each other." Mr. Green flipped to another page. "This is a photograph taken by a neighbor in Mr. Lott's building. It shows you and Mr. Lott embracing in the hallway outside his apartment 3 weeks ago." The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Simon had his arms around me, and I was looking up at him in a way that looked intimate even to me. That was just a friendly hug, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Mrs. Morell, Mr. Green continued, your husband also has recordings of conversations you had with your friend Ellen, in which you discussed your marriage in disparaging terms and expressed attraction to Mr. Lott. Recordings? How? I looked at Nate in shock. Ellen called me, Nate said quietly. After your lunch last week, she was concerned about some things you said. She thought I should know that you'd been talking about reconsidering your marriage options. I felt like the room was spinning. Ellen had betrayed me. My own best friend had gone to my husband behind my back. She recorded me without my permission. She didn't record you, Nate said. She called me and told me what you'd said. I asked her to repeat it while I was recording, because I knew you'd deny it. Mr. Green played a brief audio clip on his phone. Ellen's voice was clear and uncomfortable. She said that sometimes she wonders if she made a mistake getting married so young. And when I asked if she had feelings for Simon, she got defensive and said it was nice to have male attention that wasn't followed by suspicion and interrogation. David, I'm really worried about her marriage. Hearing my own words repeated back to me in that sterile conference room was devastating. I had said those things, but they sounded so much worse out of context. This is entrapment, I said weakly. You tricked Ellen into... I didn't trick anyone, Nate interrupted. I asked my friend to tell me what my wife had said about our marriage and about another man. That's all. Mr. Green slid another document across the table. Mrs. Morell, this is a petition for divorce on grounds of adultery and irreconcilable differences. It also includes a request for primary custody of your daughter. The words hit me like a physical blow. Adultery? Nate, I never slept with Simon. Adultery doesn't require sexual intercourse in this state, Mr. Green explained professionally. Emotional infidelity and inappropriate conduct can constitute adultery under the law. You can't take Mira away from me. I don't want to, Nate said, and for the first time since I'd arrived, his voice cracked slightly. But I can't have her in an environment where her mother is carrying on with another man and lying about it. I'm not carrying on with anyone. Nate opened his manila folder and pulled out more papers. These are bank statements showing cash withdrawals that correspond with your visits to Simon's apartment. This is a receipt from the restaurant where you had lunch with him last Tuesday, the day you told me you were working late. And this is a sworn statement from Simon's neighbor who has seen you coming and going from his apartment at various times over the past 2 months. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. It looked damning, even to me. Every innocent visit, every friendly text, every small lie I'd told to avoid Nate's jealousy, it all added up to a pattern that looked like an affair. Nate, please, let me explain. I don't want explanations anymore, Ridey. I want the truth. The truth is that Simon and I are friends. Yes, I've been to his apartment. Yes, we've had lunch together. Yes, I've complained about our marriage to Ellen, but I've never cheated on you. Haven't you? Nate's eyes were filled with pain. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. You've been sharing things with him that you should have been sharing with me. You've been seeking comfort and validation from another man. You've been lying to me about where you go and who you see. How is that not cheating? I wanted to argue, but looking at all the evidence laid out in front of me, I realized how my behavior must have looked from his perspective. Every text that seemed harmless in the moment, every visit that felt innocent, every lie that seemed small. Together, they painted a picture of a woman who was at least emotionally unfaithful to her husband. I never meant for it to happen like this, I whispered. But it did happen, Nate said. And now I can't trust you anymore. Mr. Green cleared his throat. Mrs. Morell, you have the right to retain your own counsel to review these documents and respond to the petition. I'd recommend doing so as soon as possible. As I left the law office with copies of all the evidence against me, I felt numb. My phone buzzed with a text from Simon. Simon, how did the meeting go? I'm here if you need to talk. For the first time, I realized that Simon's support didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt like part of the problem. I drove home to an empty house and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers. Somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I had destroyed my marriage. And the worst part was, I was only just beginning to understand how. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal consultations and desperate attempts to salvage my marriage. I hired my own attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Williams, who reviewed Nate's evidence with a grim expression. "Mrs. Morell, I have to be honest with you. Your husband has built a very strong case. The pattern of deception, the emotional affair, the inappropriate conduct. It's going to be difficult to fight this." "But I never actually cheated," I insisted. "Doesn't that matter?" "It matters, but not as much as you might think. The court will look at the totality of your behavior. And frankly, your husband has been very thorough in documenting everything. I tried reaching out to Nate directly, but he would only communicate through his lawyer. I tried calling Ellen, but she wouldn't take my calls. Even my own mother seemed less supportive when I explained the full extent of the evidence against me. "Ridey, honey, maybe you should consider what you really want," she said during one of our phone conversations. "If you're not happy in your marriage, maybe this is an opportunity to start fresh." "I don't want to start fresh. I want my family back." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true anymore. The past few weeks had forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about my behavior and my feelings. Had I been emotionally unfaithful to Nate? Looking back honestly, I had to admit that maybe I had been. The mediation was scheduled for a Friday morning in a sterile conference room at the courthouse. Nate arrived with his lawyer and his brother Peter for moral support. I came alone, having decided that bringing my mother would only make things worse. Nate looked tired but resolute. He'd lost weight over the past month, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But when he looked at me, I saw something I'd never seen before: indifference. "Mrs. Morell," the mediator began, "your husband is seeking dissolution of marriage on grounds of adultery and irreconcilable differences. He's also requesting primary custody of your minor child. How do you respond to these requests?" I looked across the table at Nate, hoping to see some softness in his expression, some sign that he might be willing to work things out, but his face was stone. I don't contest the divorce," I said quietly, "but I want joint custody of Mira." "Based on what grounds?" Nate's lawyer asked. "Mrs. Morell has demonstrated a pattern of deception and inappropriate behavior. She's involved our client's 7-year-old daughter in adult conflicts and made disparaging comments about her father in front of the child. I remembered the birthday party toast and felt a wave of shame. That was a mistake. I was upset, and I said things I shouldn't have." "What about the lying?" Nate spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. "What about all the times you looked our daughter in the eye and lied about where you were going or who you were with?" "I was trying to protect her from conflict." "You were protecting yourself from consequences." The mediator reviewed the evidence that both sides had submitted. In addition to everything I'd seen at the lawyer's office, Nate had gathered more documentation. Screenshots of social media interactions between Simon and me, testimony from neighbors who had seen me coming and going at odd hours, even receipts from gifts I'd bought Simon that I'd hidden from Nate. "Mrs. Morell, the court is generally inclined toward joint custody arrangements," the mediator explained. "However, in cases where one parent has demonstrated a pattern of deception or has involved the child in adult conflicts, we may consider alternative arrangements." "What does that mean?" "It means your husband is willing to offer you supervised visitation every other weekend, with the possibility of expanded visitation after 6 months if you complete counseling and demonstrate stable behavior." Supervised visitation. The words hit me like a slap. "You want to take my daughter away from me?" "I want to protect my daughter from further instability," Nate said quietly. "You made choices, Ridey. These are the consequences." I looked around the room at all the serious faces staring at me. My lawyer squeezed my hand sympathetically, but even she seemed to think this was the best offer I was likely to get. If I agree to this, what happens to our house, our assets? Nate's lawyer slid another document across the table. Mr. Morell is willing to buy out your share of the house at current market value. Other assets will be divided according to state guidelines, with adjustments made for Mrs. Morell's financial misconduct. Financial misconduct? The cash withdrawals, the unexplained expenses, the gifts purchased for Mr. Lott using marital funds. I stared at the settlement offer. It was fair, maybe even generous. Nate was giving me a way out that would leave me financially stable, even if it cost me my family. I need time to think about this. Mrs. Morell, the mediator said gently, if we can't reach an agreement today, this matter will go to trial. Based on the evidence I've reviewed, I don't think that would be in your best interest. I looked at Nate one more time. Is this really what you want? To destroy our family over a friendship? You destroyed our family, he said simply. I'm just trying to protect what's left of it. The finality in his voice broke something inside me. I realized that no matter what I said or did, I had lost him completely. The man who had loved me for 10 years, who had built a life with me, who had trusted me with his heart. I had pushed him so far away that he couldn't even see me as the same person anymore. Fine, I whispered. I'll sign. The paperwork took another hour. As I signed document after document, formally ending my marriage and agreeing to limited custody of my daughter, I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. When it was over, Nate stood up and shook hands with the mediator and the lawyers. He looked at me one last time. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Ridey. I really do. Nate, wait. But he was already walking away, his brother's hand on his shoulder, leaving me alone with the wreckage of everything I'd once taken for granted. That evening, I sat in my empty house, soon to be Nate's house, and realized that Simon hadn't texted me all day. When I reached out to him, his response was polite but distant. Simon, sorry to hear about the divorce. I think it's probably best if we don't stay in touch for a while. Good luck with everything. Even Simon, the man I'd risked everything for, didn't want me anymore. 3 months later, I moved into a small apartment across town. Mira visits me every other weekend, under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. She asks when she can come home, and I have to explain that Daddy's house is her home now. Nate remarried a year later, a kind woman named Sarah, who teaches at Mira's school. From what I hear, they're very happy together. Mira calls her Miss Sarah and seems to adore her. I see them sometimes at Mira's school events. Nate looks content in a way I never saw when he was married to me. It's painful to admit, but I think I did him a favor by setting him free. As for me, I'm still trying to understand how a simple friendship could have cost me everything. My therapist says it wasn't simple at all, that I was seeking validation outside my marriage because I wasn't willing to do the hard work of fixing what was broken inside it. She's probably right. But understanding why it happened doesn't make the consequences any easier to live with. I lost my husband, my daughter, my home, and most of my friends because I convinced myself that innocent flirtation was harmless. Because I prioritized my ego over my family. Because I chose to lie instead of having difficult conversations. The worst part is that I can see now what Nate was trying to tell me all along. It was never about the couch or the text messages or even Simon himself. It was about respect. It was about honesty. It was about making my marriage a priority instead of taking it for granted. But I learned that lesson too late, and now I'm living with the consequences of choices I can never take back. Some mistakes you can recover from, some bridges you can rebuild, but some things, once broken, stay broken forever. I know that now. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.